Hello, everyone. It's your boy Hunt, back with another moderately adequate episode of Tabletop Recap. We got our co-host Big Boy Chungus here.
Hello.
And today, most of our episodes recently have just been our playthroughs of Descent into Avernus. So I want to do a couple episodes before the next one that aren't Descent into Avernus. I mean, they'll still be D&D related, since that's mostly what we're up to these days. We're still going to be starting that monthly Call of Cthulhu one, and Keocat and I are going to do one as well, etc. And that's just TTRPGs. We also have regular board games and stuff, more miniature games that we're going to be getting to. Before we get started into today's stuff, I do want to mention the Call of Cthulhu sort of cryptid bestiary thing that I was writing. That kind of monster manual sort of book, I've decided not to publish it because I can't afford like a bunch of art and stuff, and I don't and etc., and I don't want to use people's art without permission, etc., etc. And there are some monsters that I have created myself that aren't like Bigfoot and Chupacabra and etc., so that there's no like public domain art of them I can take, etc., etc. So what I've decided to do is, instead of selling it on Miskatonic, what I'm actually going to do is just put it on our Patreon for free. Well, quote unquote free. You still got to pay to get it, but like it'll be in the $5 tier. But in the $5 tier, you also get like all our videos and pictures, not only for the podcast, but also all our different YouTube channels and other projects and etc. And we do have a YouTube channel where we do lots of gaming unboxings and stuff as well. B3 Productions, link in the description below for both the Patreon and the YouTube that we do our tabletop gaming stuff on. And I think I'm also going to do a giveaway for it on the podcast, where I'll have people email stuff in, and I'll choose a winner. But until then, I'm still writing it. I have to play test a lot of it because I'm just making the monsters up. But yeah, I think it'll be fine. I don't feel like I'll be able to justify a price for it without all the cool art and stuff. But today, we're actually going to go through a list of all the big official D&D 5th edition books. I'm going to tell you what they are, give a read up, and then we're going to give our thoughts on them. Ones we've been all the way through and used a bunch, and ones that, honestly, we haven't even touched, or don't even have, but we're going to give impressions anyways.
Yeah, we've got all the stuff that we want to get into and talk about, but we're basically having to take it one session at a time, and it's like taking a huge smoothie and forcing it down a little funnel.
Yeah.
Because because we only do one session at a time. We can't do everything at once.
Yeah, and we don't play every week either, like a lot of groups. And our sessions are shorter than a lot of groups as well. Busy boys and girls. So yeah, the first book on the list is, of course, first we're going to do the core rule books, starting off with the Player's Handbook. It's an essential reference for every Dungeons & Dragons role player. It contains rules for character creation and advancement, backgrounds and skills, exploration and combat, equipment, spells, and much more. I don't have a copy of the handbook, but I've been through it plenty of times. You have a copy of the handbook right there in front of you, actually.
Yep.
So, what are your thoughts on the 5e handbook? Most of my experience is actually in the 4e one.
I don't have much of a point of reference because 5th edition was the first one that I've come across, and I haven't read any of the previous editions' monster manuals and player handbooks. But I thought it was pretty straightforward, very intuitive. It's not so much that the information is hard to digest, there's just a lot of it. And one thing that I would definitely recommend and advise is that if you're a new player to D&D, read it at least once, or find a PDF, borrow a friend's copy, go through it at least once, because I played it without even looking at it to begin with. And it was a bit of a mess.
Well, in my opinion, it's more of a reference guide because if you sit down and read that entire book through, I kind of doubt that you're going to retain a lot of it.
Yeah, but there are some people who don't even bother looking at it.
Yeah, like how to play videos on YouTube are very helpful for learning the rules, but when it's time to build a character, you want the handbook on hand, Lahaim. So
absolutely,
even if you know the rules, it's still a very hand-y reference to have when building a character. So if I ended up buying my own copy, which I don't need to because we have multiple copies at the table already, but if I ever splintered off from this group and needed to get my own copy, it'd probably be more for character creation since I know most of the rules. And the ones I don't know, I can just Google. But the next book is the Dungeon Master's Guide. It's all you need to run a Dungeons and Dragons game. All you need is your imagination, some dice, and of course, this book. The Dungeon Master's Guide teaches you how to run D&D adventures for your players, how to invent monsters for them to fight, mysteries for them to solve, and fantasy worlds for them to explore. I have never used this when creating a world. Most of my Game Master experience is with other games, actually, and not Dungeons & Dragons. That's most of my player experience. Because the only way I can get other people to play other games is to be the GM, so I never get to play the other games on my list. But
I am very much in a similar situation. I have not played as a player in over 6 months.
That's true. That's very true.
But that's okay, because I have fun DMing. It gives a bit of a power play when you know all the secrets and what all is going on. I definitely enjoyed the Dungeon Master's Handbook or Dungeon Master's Guide. Because when I first started playing, I immediately got obsessed and started trying to create my own world without any kind of direction or context, just sort of throwing out random ideas, putting them on paper, and then seeing what sticks. But then after skimming through it, looking at some of the sections that talk about, how to create NPCs, how to generate terrain for your world, how to create the countries, continents, governments. And I'm like, ooh, I need to kind of scale this back a little bit, do this one step at a time. And that's one thing that I like about the DM's
You don't even
guide.
need to do all that stuff, to be honest.
No, you don't. But what it did for me is that it gave me a set of stepping stones, I guess you could say, and showed me what to prioritize and what to kind of leave to improv, I guess.
Yeah, I know people love Lord of the Rings, but to be honest, it set this unrealistic precedent for having as much lore as possible in the fantasy genre. Like, all modern fantasy franchises have, more lore than they could possibly need. And in my opinion, that actually makes things more difficult in the TTRPG setting. Because there's more you have to adhere to. You have less freedom when improvising and etc. You see what I mean?
Yeah, it's helpful to be prepared, but you don't want to get bogged down with details necessarily.
I think the Faerun Forgotten Realms lore is way too much because we should be able to make half of that stuff up. Because one time I was making a character and I was like, I want the character to act like this. And someone was like, oh, you can't because that's not how they act in the lore.
Well, we've kind of done stuff similar to that, with...
You and I don't really care that much.
No, not really. I like some aspects of the lore. I like the Faerun pantheons. I like some of the natural and magical disaster segments, but there's a lot of small stuff that I could, take it or leave it.
Do I need to know how the gods were created? No. I can think of no situation that my 20-year-old lizard folk dancer fighter is gonna care about that ever.
You can kind of see this with our characters Corvus and Maestan, because the Raven Queen, for example, the way we portray the Raven Queen for Connor's character isn't even close to what the D&D originally had in store for her. We've changed her a little bit. And then Maestan's crew, the Platinum Cadre, they don't even have the Axe of Tritan. That was something we totally made up as a focal point just to kind of drive his character's backstory.
Plus, most Dragonborns aren't religious anyways.
Yeah, at least the ones in Timanthir.
The ones in their, area aren't, but, they venture out. They learn new ideas. That's why you should always leave your hometown. Always leave your hometown.
And that's one thing that I really like about the Dungeon Master's Guide is they do make a point that, yeah, if you're going to use our campaign, there's a lot of stuff you need to know. But we're not saying you have to learn our setting and our campaigns. You can change it, alter it, make it completely new from the ground up if you want. And they say that there's stuff that they advise you to do, but nothing is ever set in stone. In fact, at the very beginning of the book, they tell you, this is all just for suggestion. Make your games the way you want them.
Yeah, that's one good thing. Like, most TTRPGs do encourage the DMs to make up their own stuff, but D&D definitely does it more than others, and that might just be because they're the most popular or they've been around kind of the longest. But they encourage it a lot more than others, because like I also do Call of Cthulhu, and it's it's a bit more strict than D&D.
It's definitely more grounded in realism. As far as mortality and how your biology and I guess if magic was a real thing, how it might work. Because it's so easy to die in Call of Cthulhu.
Yeah, I remember I was helping Karen make her Call of Cthulhu character for Cult of the Exo, which is one that we've done on this podcast.
The dog to push.
Yeah, that was one I wrote in our first time playing. And I was like, all right, roll to see how big you are. And she was like, I don't get to choose my size. And I was like, when in your life did God come down from the heavens and be like, okay, tell me what size you want to be? It's like, no, it's genetics and stuff. You have to roll for it. Because Call of Cthulhu is not an adventure game. It's a mystery horror.
Yeah.
But action adventure, let them choose their size. But mystery horror, you want them to feel like they have less control in a horror game.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's one of the things that makes it scary. We're getting a little off track, but yeah, so the DM's Guide does tell you how to create your own stuff so you don't have to stick to their lore, which isn't even interesting lore anyways. Ooh, yeah, that's right. Don't at me.
It's all suggestions, basically. They say that if you're a new DM and you're having some trouble, use this as a helpful guide, but don't feel like you have to stick by the rules and don't think that they're set in stone. I really like that mentality.
But those are the two must-have to play books, basically. This next one's not a technical must-have, but I would say it kind of is.
At least if you're a DM, you don't need to. Yeah,
the Monster Manual. You knew which one's coming up.
Yeah,
the Monster Manual isn't a technical must-have, but you should get it. Only if you're going to make your own worlds and adventures, though. If you're only going to play pre-written stuff, you don't really need it because anything you buy is going to have all the stat blocks you need within it, right?
Yeah. I like to think of the Monster Manual as kind of like a cookbook where it's just got all these recipes for different monsters and statistics. And if you're having a hard time figuring out original monsters to populate your world with, just take some of the pre-made cookie cutter stuff and sprinkle them in like a salad.
Yeah, the Monster Manual teaches you how to fill your Dungeons & Dragons game with monsters, populate the game with pesky goblins, mighty dragons, etc., for your players to deal with, which is good. I kind of wish that I don't think Call of Cthulhu 7th edition has a book like this, and that's because Call of Cthulhu is kind of afraid to make new monsters, even though Lovecraft is public domain and most of Lovecraft's universe was made by other authors, and also I don't want to use Lovecraft's racist monsters. The monsters I use the most in Call of Cthulhu are actually the ones in the very, very back that are just standard. Vampire, zombie, skeleton, werewolf. I'm very universal monsters, gothic horror, so those work better for me than fish, man.
And if you're a seasoned DM, like Karen, for example, a lot of the monsters that she used for the 3 sessions we played, those were all, for the most part, her original ideas. Like, she pulled that lamprey beast just out of nowhere for the fight. I think she looked at a book for 2 seconds and said, okay, I know what I want to throw at my party.
Yeah, she worked very hard on that, actually.
She told me it was just spur of the moment.
The lamprey?
Yeah.
Oh. Well, she worked very hard on the story.
No,
I don't know if she worked very hard on the stat block. I reskin stat blocks all the time. I'm like, all right, someone already wrote balance the stats for... I'm terrible at balancing when it comes to stuff. That's why I don't DM for D&D. And that's why I love being the game master for Call of Cthulhu, because you're not supposed to be balanced in that game. At least not all the time.
And Dungeons and Dragons, it's especially hard to balance stuff because
CR is
garbage. Yeah, this is a challenge rating level 2 creature, but has an ability that can one-shot you. You'd think that warrant a little bit higher CR. Like the Brain Devourer. Literally, a Brain Devourer is just a brain on legs that has the ability to eat people's intelligence. And it's only like a CR1 because it's got like a hit dice pool of like 10, and they're super small. But the thing is that if they surprise you and they succeed on a grapple check, and no one else is aware of what's going on, they can literally kill you in 3 turns. Because they'll suck away your intelligence until you have 0 intelligence. And if you have a 0 in any of your stat blocks, that is instant death.
Yeah, they'd starve to death if they tried that on me. But, yeah, so if you want to make a world and stuff, the Dungeon Master's Guide is pretty much a must-have. But you can get all the basic rules that you need to know as a Dungeon Master as well from the Player's Handbook. And then the monster manual, you want the monsters from that. So that's the big rule books. And now we got the supplemental stuff, right? Mm-hmm. First up, Volo's Guide to Monsters. It provides something exciting for players and dungeon masters everywhere. A deep dive into the lore behind some of D&D's most popular and iconic monsters. Dozens of monsters new to the 5th edition to include in your epic adventures. New playable races to allow you to build characters to fit nearly any type of story in your D&D game. You know more about this one than me because you have all of these supplemental books. You have like every single one, don't you?
I have almost all of them. There's only like 1 or 2 that I don't think I have, and that's because they're not necessary. Like I think
you do have them all.
No, I don't have the Adventurer's Guide to the Sword Coast.
Oh, I thought you did have that.
Nope. And I've kind of been avoiding it because I've heard so many negative reviews about it. It basically just gives you one big lore dump to the region of the Sword Coast. And people have told me that you'll learn more from the Sword Coast by getting like Storm King's Thunder than reading this book.
No, it's not even on the list of stuff I have here.
But
I think it's supposed to be more of a setting book, actually, not a supplemental book.
But Volo's Guide is definitely worth the purchase. I've read it multiple times, and it has 3 main parts. The first part goes into more lore detail about some very specific and popular creatures, including Mind Flayers and Illithids, the Yuan Ti, and even classic goblins and kobolds.
The more goblin and kobold lore is exactly what we need.
Well, it's not so much lore. It's more like behavioral and community info. Like, for example, it's got a whole section that shows you how to create a goblin camp for homebrew. It's got a Yuan Ti temple, Mind Flayer headquarters. And it even has example layouts for how all these things should look and what kind of buildings and terrain you should use. Again, not set in stone, but just some really good examples that are in a lot of detail. The second part is they introduce half dozen new playable races, one of which is your new favorite, the Lizard Folk.
Yes, that's my go-to race.
Yeah, Volo's Guide was the one who introduced that as a playable race.
And for that I'll be forever grateful.
And then you've also got the Kinku, the Triton, the Goliath, and the Yuan Ti Pureblood. Specifically the Pureblood.
Yeah, they're not going to let you play as an abomination or something.
Yeah, those are completely excluded from all society. You can kind of get away with playing a Yuan Ti Pureblood.
Pureblood basically is a
scaly human.
Yeah, with snake eyes. That's it.
Yep. And, and then also the Goblinoids. You also get the option of playing either a Hobgoblin or a Bugbear, in addition to a Goblin as well.
Yeah, that's good. Goblin should have been a playable race from the start, if you ask me.
Yeah, I've actually, before I became pretty much the permanent DM, I actually did want to make... also kobolds. I wanted to make a kobold and or a goblin character at some point. As a playable character.
Your goblin character idea that you gave me that one day that made me scream.
And laugh. I won't say what it is on the podcast.
Just in case it comes up later.
Yeah, it's going to be a surprise.
Ugh. God, it was awful.
Hey, you said it was a really cool idea, and then you realized what.
And then I realized what you were doing, you little turd. Okay, whatever. We're not. No, it's done. We're done.
So
tweet at me at B3 Productions if you want to know more.
Thirdly, in the Volo's Guide, it then gives like this whole expansion into a bunch of new monster stat blocks. A lot of these are monsters that would only be found in very specific campaign books. So if you want a bunch of new monsters for homebrew, but you don't want to go out and buy a bunch of the pre-written modules to get the stat blocks, Volo's Guide is definitely worth the buy. It includes a lot of devils, demons, fiends, celestials, beasts, monstrosities, abominations, aberrations, you name it, it's got an expansion.
Nice.
And 10 out of 10 if you ask me. Probably one of the best extra supplemental materials out of all of them.
Well, the next one is actually my 10 out of 10. This is a supplemental, but I actually think it's a must-get, to be completely honest. Xanathar's Guide to Everything.
This is just an expansion of the player's handbook, and it is so funny and so beautifully written.
Yeah, I think all these supplementals are actually like written in character, aren't they?
Well, written in the extent that there's like annotations and notes written by the character.
Yeah.
Xanathar's Guide, obviously being written by Xanathar. And
yeah, Waterdeep's most infamous crime lord.
Even Volo's Guide to Monsters has annotation from Volothamp Godarm, who you guys will see in a later campaign.
Yeah, but the thing about Xanathar is he like hoards information on everybody, and he like catalogs everything.
He's super arrogant too.
Yeah, so that's all in his book here. All the stuff he's cataloged. Because of this book, no one can complain about 5e Rangers anymore because it gives you like 3 new subclasses and all this great stuff to quote-unquote fix Rangers because people complained. All you gotta do is open the book and you don't have to worry about that. I've actually heard this book referred to several times as Xanathar Fixes Everything. I've been seeing a lot of text online where people are just calling it Xanathar Fixes Everything because it's got so much great stuff.
It's awesome. I love it. It definitely has. The race or the class that I chose for my very first playable character, Fate, the genie tiefling, came from Xanathar's Guide, the Storm Sorcerer.
Fate sucked so hard.
But in the best way possible.
But yeah, it's got a ton of stuff. Character options, dungeon master's tools, new spells, character name generators, which we used today, actually, because we had to write a side quest for Descent into Avernus, because we really screwed up last session and we're trying to fix it.
Yeah. I just, we've already made the apologies all around. And I think everyone is aware now that those mistakes are not something we're taking personally, nor do we want them to be repeated. So we're just
not taking them lightly either. We're cracking down. We spent a while today just like sitting down in front of our computers like, we have to fix this subplot.
We have to go back.
Doc Brown, please. We need you. But there was a lot going on. So that book actually helped us today. And another book that I think we used today, Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes.
Okay, now Mordenkainen, potato potato.
We say Kanan in this house because we watch Puffin Forest. But people will get mad and tell us Kanan, though.
I watch about a dozen different YouTubers, and they all have different pronunciations, so I really don't care. But anyways, this book is very much useful, but the one thing that I am going to criticize it for is that it feels like it was specifically made for people who just want to run Descent into Avernus, because literally the first half of the book is nothing but a lore, exposition dump, and some minor stat builds on just the demons, the devils, and the blood war.
I think there's some celestial stuff in there too.
Very, very minor. The first half of the book, it explains to you what the blood war is, what the difference between the demons and devils are, the main layout of their realms and their planes of existences, and then a little bit of information about them. Towards the end of this half, it does give you some helpful information about how to create homebrewed cults. So, like, for example, if you're making if you're trying to make a cult of Asmodeus, it tells you, like, okay, if you've got a bunch of people who are worshiping Asmodeus, the literal devil Lucifer of Dungeons and Dragons. Here are some things that his minions would have power over. Here are some abilities that they might have that are unique to him. And it allows you to customize, make more personalize your cults depending on who they worship. Because not all demon and devil lords the same.
Yeah, because the side quest we were writing today, at first we were like, we need to populate it with devils. And then we were like, no, we need to populate it with demons. We were using that book. And then we were like, wait, none of this makes sense. Undead it is.
And well, actually, undead was best because some of our party members, they have real grudges against the undead. And again, going back to our previous mistake, we've neglected a few of our players' backstories and player elements. So we just said, you know what, let's just forget making an encounter that fits Avernus. Let's make an encounter that fits our players.
And we still worked it in so that it did fit Avernus, which was great. I think we did a good job on it, and I think they will like it.
I agree. And the second half of Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes, much like Volo's Guide to Monsters, it gives you a bunch of new stat blocks for creatures that you can populate your game with.
Lots of elves and Duragar and stuff.
Yeah. It also talks about the elves and dwarven history as well. But I feel like the book is definitely dominated by the fiends, the devils and demons, and evil creatures in the other realms of Faerun. It's a good book, don't get me wrong. I thoroughly enjoyed reading it, and I love the monster stat blocks that you can use. But it feels like if you want to run Descent into Avernus, you almost have to play this. Almost like how people tell you that if you want to run Storm King's Thunder, you have to get the Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide.
Yeah, but these supplemental books are mostly for DMs anyways. If you're a player, you're mostly just looking at lore and spoilers for stat blocks. I don't want to know what a stat block is when I fight a monster. Actually, our group has a really fun time figuring out the CR. I was watching some video the other day, and it was like, just tell your players the CR. It'll make the game go faster. And I was like, what?
No.
No.
If you want that, there are already player character classes that you can pick that allow you to do things like that. Some of the new hunter classes allow you to do that. Certain types of wizards and spells can allow you to get more information on your enemies. Don't just tell them what it is. That takes out some of the adventure and fun. Let them figure it out, and they can make it as easy or as hard as they want.
Yeah, like it's pretty wild because it's like our group loves figuring out CR. They're like, oh, right, that didn't hit, but this attack from earlier did. What? That means it's between these numbers, blah, blah, blah. They're like doing the math. They love it. And then the next one, at the time of recording this, it's pretty new. I think you have it.
I know which one you're talking about.
Yeah. Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. The wizard Tasha, whose great works include the spell Tasha's Hideous Laughter, has gathered bits and bobs of precious lore during her illustrious career as an adventurer. Her enemies wouldn't want those treasured secrets scattered across the multiverse, so in defiance, she's collected them and codified these tidbits for the enrichment of all. So it's basically a big middle finger to her enemies.
Yeah. Now, one thing that I love about Tasha's is that I feel like it's not... Unlike Volo or Mordenkainen's book, this is very much a hodgepodge of different mechanics, character creation, and statistics and mechanics. It is a beautiful work of chaos. There are so many different chapters that tell you so many different things. First things first, it is the first book for both players and DMs that have the Alchemist character stats that is not in the Eberron supplement. This is if you're a new player and you want to play I guess you could call it the DLC class, the Artificer. This book has everything you need to create it.
I hate it when you call these DLC so much. I call you out on it every time.
And I keep doing it because I don't care.
You refuse to stop. Whatever.
Well, maybe not DLC. Maybe just alpha work or whatever. I don't know. Basically, the Artificer was once in our Unearthed Arcana. It was play tested, and then it finally got balanced to the point where they could release it. And that's what I feel like what a lot of Tasha's Cauldron and everything is. It is finally stuff that was play tested and put through Unearthed Arcana, made balanced, and then introduced into the main public. Because in addition,
I don't really keep up with Unearthed Arcana to be frank, because it's all either way too powerful or way too weak.
Well, in addition to the Artificer, they also have a ton of new subclasses for all of the already existing classes in D&D. They've, just like Xanathar's Guide. There's like 3 different new subclasses for there's like a total of 6 add-ons, I guess you could say, that are not in the player's handbook for each class. Different cleric divinities, different warrior classes, different barbarian groups. It is phenomenal. And then on top of that, the next section of the book is just a whole bunch of alternative rules that you can use for your Dungeons and Dragons. Like one that I particularly love that they've changed is if you want to play a specific race or a class, it is encouraged that you don't you have to put some thought into the statistics, because if you want to play a hulked out gnome, good luck, because gnomes as a race just before Tasha's Cauldron just don't have a lot of benefits for strength. But one of the things that Tasha's does is that they basically say, okay, here are some ways that you could switch around some of the statistics for other races without having to be impeded. So now if you want to play a roided out gnome or a super smart half orc, go for it. There's no limitation there. They've also got a bunch of stuff for DMs, like how to host a successful session 0, how to set up what's called the new patron style of mission, where you can actually get not a individual patron like a warlock, but a group patron that the whole party does missions for. A new sidekick and minions mechanics so that you can have personal NPCs that help you in battle in certain areas. It's
or you
really
could get
cool.
Stibbles. Not sponsored, just
Stibbles
looks dope.
Stibbles is mainly for pets and companions. This is just straight up NPCs that will follow you around as a sidekick. So for those of you who ever want to run a My Hero Academia homebrew, there you go.
I would just use a superhero system for that. I hate how people are like, I want to play a modern day superhero game, but I'll use the D&D system. And it's like,
No.
There are so many systems for superheroes, it's insane. Like for real. Like even ones that aren't affiliated with superhero franchises that are pre-existing. Some of those exist as well, though. There is a DC one. I saw it. The source book was $80.
But yeah, Tasha's is chock full of all kinds of different stuff. It definitely has more variety than other supplements, and it's all super helpful.
Dope. Next, we're going to go into starter sets. Woo! Yeah, these will be very beneficial for anyone just getting into the game. They're a good, cheap way to get started. The first starter set, which is just called Dungeons and Dragons Starter Set, is your gateway into action-packed stories of the imagination. This boxed set contains the essential rules of the game, plus everything you need to play heroic characters on perilous adventures in the world of fantasy. Explore subterranean labyrinths, plunder hordes of treasure, battle legendary monsters.
I've never played this one before, but I've read a bunch of reviews on it. I've seen other people play it on YouTube.
Yeah, so this starter set is what comes with Lost Mines of Phandelver.
It's definitely, from what I've seen and heard, it's definitely a good introduction for people who want to get into Dungeons & Dragons. That's what it's intended for. It's very straightforward, very simple, nothing too convoluted, and it's very supportive of people who've never played the game before.
It's pretty affordable starter set too, to be honest. I saw it for $12 the other day. I always recommend getting these things from your local gaming or comic book store. I have seen them at GameStop if you don't have a store like that, and of course they're always online. But yeah, support your local game store if you can. But I mean, it comes with a set of dice, which everybody needs. It comes with character sheets, a quick start rules, basically.
So that way you don't have to go through the trouble of getting the whole player's handbook. You can just use the quick start guide.
Yeah, because the handbook, those can be expensive investments if you've never played before.
You also may never use some of the mechanics that come with it.
Yeah, if you're listening to this and you've never played, learn from watching videos and the starter set rules. And then if you like the game, then maybe buy yourself the player's handbooks and stuff, because it can get expensive. You can invest a lot of money in this before you even decide if you like the game. So that's why the starter sets are pretty great. The next starter set is called the Dungeons and Dragons Essentials Kit. It's a new introductory, quote-unquote new introductory product meant to bring D&D to audiences interested in jumping into a fantasy story. The box set contains the essentials you need to run a D&D game with 1 Dungeon Master and 1 to 5 Adventurers. A newly designed rulebook onboards players by teaching them how to make characters, and the included adventure, Dragon of Icespire Peak, introduces a new one-on-one rules variant. And I have heard that Dragon of Icespire Peak is awesome.
I have to take your word for it. I haven't watched or heard or read anything about it.
Well, I don't watch live play, and I certainly don't watch stuff about campaigns I haven't played. But I have heard that it's dope. I've heard it's a great introductory adventure. Just fantastic. I mean, this comes with dice and character sheets and stuff as well. It's mostly the same thing as the other starter set, but you get a different adventure and also slightly different rules because it has that 1 player, 1 dungeon master thing, which isn't as near as fun as...
Yeah, that was something else I forgot to mention. Tasha also goes into more detail about that one-on-one rule. I think it's interesting, but I don't see myself ever using it.
Yeah, me either. It doesn't sound like any fun. For me, it's 3 to 5 players. I don't want more than 5, and I don't want less than 3.
If I'm playing one-on-one in Dungeons & Dragons, I might as well just go play a video game.
Yeah, just play a video game with one of your... That's a lot of work for one... That's a lot of work for the DM for one person.
Yeah.
The only time I can see you doing that is maybe just within the context of this set to get one person into the game, you know?
Yeah.
That's it. Because otherwise, there's so much prep and stuff that it's almost not worth it for a DM to run a game for one person. Ugh. And then we got the crossover starter sets, right?
Okay.
First up, the Stranger Things Dungeons and Dragons starter set contains everything players need to embark on a Stranger Things adventure, including the essential rules of the role-playing game. It's a great way for new as well as seasoned Dungeons and Dragons players to experience the D&D adventure Stranger Things character Mike Wheeler has created for his friends. Pick your character. Will you be Will the Wise or Dustin the Dwarf? Get your fireballs ready as... All these are episode 1 references. As you investigate the mysterious castle and battle the ferocious Demigorgon. Prepare for just about anything, because the game just got stranger, even though it really didn't, because I hear this is actually a substanceless cash grab.
Oh yeah, I know it is. I read and watched some of the stuff about it. It's just... It's a cash grab, as you said. If you're a fan of D&D, but you haven't seen Stranger Things, it's meant to get you to watch Stranger Things on Netflix.
Yeah. Okay. All crossovers by nature are cash grabs. I want to make that clear. But this one's extra cash grabby because there's no real substance to it. Because the next one we're going to talk about is also a crossover, and I felt like it gave us plenty.
Yeah. Not to mention that if you've never played Dungeons & Dragons but you like Stranger Things, then go buy all these supplemental materials that cost hundreds of dollars. Yeah, capitalism.
The point of this is, hey, you liked Stranger Things, right? They played this game in that show. You should play that game right now.
The one thing that really makes me upset about that is this may be something that goes back to the first edition, I don't know. But the Demogorgon that they talk about in that series and the Demogorgon that's in the actual 5e are 2 totally different entities.
Yeah, the one they put on the table had 2 heads. The thing they call the Demigorgon in the show is just a D&D name put on the show's original monster.
Well, I know that, but I think originally there used to be a type of enemy called a Demigorgon, and then at some point one became so powerful that it became the definitive Demigorgon.
I don't know. Once again, I don't pay attention to the lore because I don't care. But if you like that Demigorgon, this set actually comes with a miniature, which is something the other starter sets don't do. And I thought that was interesting. It actually comes with 2 miniatures, but they're the same miniature. And it's really stupid because it's the Demigorgon from the show with like the big flower petally mouth.
Yeah.
It's a cool looking monster. I didn't really like Stranger Things that much. I didn't even finish season 1. And I'm the biggest monster fanboy you'll meet. I guess I just didn't have enough 80s nostalgia. Which is its main drawing point. But they have a miniature of that Demigorgon and then another miniature of that Demigorgon, both the same sculpt, but one is painted and one isn't. But the one that's painted only has the mouth painted, but they call it a fully painted miniature, and that's just a straight up lie. That's just a straight up lie.
Just because the Demogorgon is the same color in the show as the little gray plastic figure is doesn't mean it's painted.
Instead of having an unpainted one and then one that's just painted in the mouth, I would have much rather had just one copy of the miniature that was fully 100% painted. That, I think almost everyone would have preferred that, right? It's like, oh, the unpainted one is for people who have miniature painting as a hobby. And I'm like, if you have miniature painting as a hobby, you're probably not buying starter sets for Dungeons & Dragons. You've probably been in Dungeons & Dragons for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And also, if someone wanted to paint that miniature, who was a miniature painter, they could just spray it with primer and then do it. It doesn't stop them from repainting it. So, yeah, I thought that was a really stupid decision. I hear the adventure is incredibly short, which is fine for a starter set adventure. Totally fine. And it's supposed to be the adventure that they were playing in episode 1, which is kind of a cool concept. Not gonna lie. But what about the character sheets? Because the read-up makes it sound like it comes with the characters from the show, but I'm looking at a picture of it now, and those character sheets seem pretty blank to me. I don't know.
I'm not 100% sure. I've never played it. I've only watched other people play it with the character sheets already developed, so I don't know if you're supposed to get like this skeleton of a character sheet that you use automatically, or if you're given the option to fill it in as you go.
Yeah, because it reads like it comes with the pre-made characters from the Stranger Things show, but I'm looking at the picture and like zooming in on the character sheets, and they're blank. So I have no clue. I think all the starter sets should come with a few pre-mades and some empties. I think that would be great. I mean, even the My Little Pony TTRPG was smart enough to do that. But yeah, so Stranger Things one seems like it's expensive too, and there's even a limited edition one that's like way more expensive. It's like, I think it's the most expensive of the 4 starter sets, and it has the least in it. So maybe reconsider.
I'd take it or leave it.
But the next starter set is one that we're very intimately familiar with. I actually bought this one when I got back into D&D, because I played 4th edition for like 4 years, and then I didn't play for several years, and now I'm playing again, and it's 5th edition time. So I got a 5th edition starter set. Dungeons & Dragons versus Rick and Morty. The world's greatest role-playing game meets television's most dysfunctional family. Whoa! What could possibly go wrong? D&D partnered with Adult Swim to bring this boxed set, blending the world of Dungeons & Dragons with the mad narcissistic genius of Rick Sanchez's power gaming sensibilities. Why do I sound like I'm doing an ad? And includes everything a dungeon master needs to channel their inner mad scientist and run a Rick-rolling adventure for up to 5 players. First off, Rick would be a terrible dungeon master. Because
he kind of already is a living dungeon master. He can literally go wherever he wants in the universe.
He would be a very DM versus the player's mindset. He'd be a terrible.
Like Gygax.
Actually, the adventure in this is apparently an adventure written by Rick, and he's called Gygax Rick, because, all the different Ricks across the multiverse and stuff. So he's a tabletop gaming Rick. And I'm not going to lie, this starter set's pretty dope.
It was fun. I totally ruined it, just like I normally do.
Yeah, you guys had to play it twice.
First time we played it, I ruined it. Second time we played it, I couldn't quit metagaming.
Well, all of you ruined it the first time. And it's hard not to metagame. Like, it's almost impossible. But then once you got past the middle, you couldn't metagame anymore because you didn't know anything else about it. But, yeah, so it has pre-made character sheets for the Smith family that you can play as a Jerry, who's... What was Jerry?
He was a half-elf wizard.
Okay. And then Summer was a...
Claire... No, Summer was a ranger. No, she was a fighter.
She was a fighter. Morty's a rogue. Beth is a cleric. And then there's one guy called Meatface. He might be in the comics. They also did comic book crossovers. So they released this and a Rick and Morty comic book crossover, which was so popular they did a second one. But yeah, this is some funny stuff. It has a dungeon crawl. It's just a dungeon crawl, but it's like a parody of dungeon crawls.
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie. A lot of the jokes in it kind of fall flat. And some rooms you have to go to in a certain order for them to really be funny.
Yeah, that was one thing that I didn't like in the first playthrough we did, is I got really confused and turned around. And I get that that's kind of what it's supposed to do, but I kind of lost interest halfway through.
Well, it's fine that you lost interest halfway through because you died halfway. Well, you died multiple times, and I kept giving you new characters. Remember when one of your characters died because you were dumb? This guy got knocked out by Sturges. First room, 2 Sturges. Took him to 0.
I also rolled 2 crit fails in a row, so there you go.
Sturges! But also, that character died, and then you took up the Beth character, and I had them walk into a room, and she was in there in a cage, naked, and all her stuff was in the chest next to her. They refused to open the chest. So he takes his naked cleric. He has no weapons. He has no items. No armor class.
I've got 2 spells that I can use.
Yeah, and then you die almost immediately, and it's wonder why that could have happened. Could it have been that you didn't get the armor that I put? You were I'd rather go through this whole dungeon with a 2 armor class and literally nothing than risk opening a chest.
I thought it was funny as all get out.
You all deserved to die during that. But yeah, we're actually going to review that whole dungeon a very... we're going to do a very in-depth review of that dungeon for probably our next episode, which will be fun. But yeah, it was great. I wish it would have come with some blank character sheets. It didn't. It did come with some cool Rick and Morty colored dice, portal colored dice. It came with a fun rulebook because the rulebook has notes in it from Rick. It was a very fun read. And yeah, this was a good starter set, and I got it on sale, so it was an extra good starter set for me. But yeah, I still have all that stuff. I dug this starter set, and that's not just because I dig Rick and Morty as a show either. Because you like Stranger Things and you were just crapping on the starter set.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Rick and Morty one, it felt good. I guess Rick and Morty is something you can easily cross over with because of its dimension hopping nature and etc.
Yeah, the multiverse is just the norm there.
But now we're going to get into the big stuff, right?
Sure.
The D&D adventure books. First up, Horde of the Dragon Queen. In an audacious bid for power, the Cult of the Dragon, along with its dragon allies and the Red Wizards of Thay, seek to bring Tiamat from her prison in the Nine Hells to Faerun. To this end, they are sweeping from town to town, laying waste to all who oppose them, and gathering a hoard of riches for their dread queen. The threat of annihilation has become so dire that groups as desperate as the Harpers and
Zentarum.
Okay, thank you. Are banding together to fight against the cult. Never before has the need for heroes been so desperate.
Yeah, this book is... I don't know if it was the first one, but it is definitely the most popular.
I think it was the first one for 5e.
The first 5e pre-written campaign, and I've heard lots of good things about it. I've heard some people who criticize in some areas, but most everyone that I've heard talk about it say that it is the best full-length campaign for new players to start with. It's got
that's probably
a great story. It's got a lot of the wider factions. You guys haven't run into them yet because Avernus takes place on a completely different plane of existence. But the Harpers, the Zentarum, Tiamat's Horde, and especially the Red Wizards of Thay, these are all factions of people that are not just relevant on the Sword Coast. They are found all over the world.
I'm sure this is one that G would like to play. He loves all the Bahamut Tiamat stuff.
I feel like, especially his character, Maestan, would have been much better suited for this campaign than Descent into Avernus.
100%. But I've heard mixed stuff about this one. I have basically no opinion on it. Never played it. I've never even held a copy of it. And I don't really watch videos about it other than someone just offhand mentioning in a video, hey, I like or dislike this one. Because I'm avoiding spoilers because I think we're going to try to play nearly all of these, if everyone wants to play them, that is. But
I've heard the same thing. I've never played it or read it as well, but from what everyone's saying, it is a good start, but the story could use some work.
Okay, this next one is called Rise of Tiamat. I'm going to give you this read-up, and you tell me what's wrong with it, okay?
Okay.
The Cult of the Dragon leads the charge in an unholy crusade to bring Tiamat back to the realms, and the situation grows more perilous for good people with each passing moment. the battle becomes increasingly political as opportunities to gather allies and gain advantage present themselves. From Waterdeep to the Sea of Moving Ice to Thay, it's a race against evil. Succeed or succumb to the oppression of draconic tyranny. Win or lose, things will never be the same again.
So it sounds to me that, one, it's a continent-wide campaign, because you already said it goes from Waterdeep to the Sea of Moving Ice, which is way up in the spine of the world, and the city of Thay, which is, I don't know its exact location because I haven't run anything that involves them yet, but it's in a pretty remote location.
Yeah, but tell me what's wrong with that read-up. Tell me why it's weird. It's the same exact concept as Horde of the Dragon Queen.
I was looking for more nuanced things. I wasn't going for right on the head stuff. But yeah, no, it is. And they actually go and explain that. So, from what I read...
The read-ups are almost exactly the same. The read-ups are basically, they're trying to bring about Tiamat, but in a different location this time.
Yeah, so there's two things that I've heard about this. The first one being is that in the first one, Rise of the Dragon Queen, Tiamat was not officially a god. She was just simply an aspect of dragonkind, and she was trying to achieve godhood. Supposedly, in this new one, Rise of Tiamat, she has already obtained godhood, but now she's trying to escape the place which she's being held, which we know now is Avernus.
Yeah, because we're in Avernus right now, in real life. But
oh no! To me, I get just oh no, Tiamat's up to her old tricks again kind of vibe.
Yeah, but those read-ups are almost exactly the same, and I think Rise of Tiamat came out like right after or something.
Oh,
I'm not sure. I don't have the dates in front of me. I just have them in a list. But like, why would you do that? Why would you do this? Like, if you're gonna play both, you better space them out, because I feel like they'll be very. I'm sure that inside the books they're both different in many, many ways. But with two read-ups that similar, that could easily turn players off. You know? Mm-hmm. That could easily make players pick one or the other. The next book I know almost nothing about. Princes of the Apocalypse, called by the Elder Elemental Eye to serve. 4 corrupt prophets have risen from the depths of anonymity to claim mighty weapons with direct links to the power of the elemental forces. Each of these prophets has assembled a cadre of cultists and creatures to serve them in the construction of 4 elemental temples of lethal design. It is up to adventurers from heroic factions such as the Emerald Enclave and the Order of the Gauntlet to discover where the true power of each prophet lay and dismantle it before it comes boiling up to obliterate the realms.
Yeah, I know next to nothing about this one either. I think the most that I ever heard about, I was watching a Gallon Goblin video because they were doing a mini set unboxing of it. Seems cool, but other than that, I know nothing about it.
Seems like it has very video game structure from that read-up.
Yeah, you pretty much, almost like a Mega Man game. Choose which one you want to go after first. The land of fire, air, water, or wind. It doesn't matter which order you get, but some might have useful items that you can use to defeat the others.
I mean, I'd play it. I'd play any of these, to
be
honest.
I mean, it doesn't sound bad. I'm not ripping on it for that. I'm just saying I know next to nothing about it, and it sounds like there's a few bad guy tropes in it.
Next up is a 5e story of one that's been around since first edition. This is a 5e remake. And probably the most popular of these. Curse of Strahd. Under raging storm clouds, the vampire Count Strahd von Zarevich stands silhouetted against the ancient walls of Castle Ravenloft. Rumbling thunder pounds the castle spires. The wind's howling increases as he turns his gaze down towards the village of Barovia. Far below, yet not beyond his keen eyesight, a party of adventurers has just entered his domain. Strahd's face forms the barest hint of a smile as his dark plan unfolds. He knew they were coming, and he knows why they came, all according to his plan. A lightning flash rips through the darkness, but Strahd is gone. Only the howling of the wind fills the midnight air. The master of Castle Ravenloft is having guests for dinner. Vampire pun, and you're invited. Yeah.
I have this one. I haven't read it in detail because I've got a bunch of other campaigns that we're working on and currently going through. But it is fun. From what everyone I've ever watched or heard a review about it has had nothing but good things to say about Curse of Strahd.
Yeah, I'm a big, universal horror German expressionist, Gothic, literature fan, and it has like all that stuff in it. So I'm pretty excited for it. I know a lot about it though, like more than about any of these, which is a little bit of a problem. It's also based off a very old one from first edition that was just called Ravenloft, which I think appeared in every edition but fourth. I think it had a remake. It's got some problematic stuff in it, like the stereotypes for the Romani people that are made as the Vishtani. Yeah, definitely change how they are, because the stereotype for the Romani people. It's like, oh, all they do is steal and curse people, and then there's a race in here that has the same aesthetic as them, and all they do is steal and curse, and that's like, change that, make them just people.
You know what I think? I have a theory about how the modern interpretation of the Romani ethnic group got started. 1/3 of most of Stephen King's movies and books are all caused by gypsy curses, according to them.
It's not a good thing. It's very problematic.
And let me clarify that when I just said I was not using the stereotype to insult someone, I am quoting parts of the movies and the genre.
Yeah, most people probably didn't even know what we meant when we said Romani because the slur is so commonplace.
I went to Macon the other day, and there is a shop called Gypsy Crafts.
Oh, no.
Just straight up on the sign.
Oh, no. Not cool. Ooh. Okay, yeah, I don't like it. Unless it's owned by a Romani person, get out. But, Curse of Strahd is very, very popular. It's kind of horrific. Strahd is kind of Lex Luthor-esque. Like, he's more dangerous because of his intelligence than his actual power. So it's pretty cool.
One thing that they do, it's up to the DM ultimately. You can either ruin it or you can make it great. But Strahd, unlike certain other villains like Tiamat or Zariel in Descent into Avernus, those villains typically don't show up until the end. You can hear stuff about them, and people will make comments about them like, oh, they're so powerful. But they just feel absent until the very end. Strahd constantly, well, not constantly, on a more uncommon basis will show up and flaunt his power at you. Like, here I am, do your worst.
Very vampire thing to do. Well, once you discover that he rules the entire place. He doesn't have to hide that he's a vampire, especially since no one can flee.
No, basically in Barovia, he is God, or at least the closest thing to a god that they have. Because since it does take place in, I guess you could say a pocket dimension or something like that, it's a separate plane of reality.
I think it's relatively a normal place. It's just sealed off, sort of, magically sealed off. Not by like a barrier, but like if you try to walk out, it's just going to twist and turn so that you...
Maybe more like a demiplane.
Yeah, that's not, maybe that. I haven't played it.
Basically, Strahd owns this place that is called Barovia, and he's been so powerful and so unchallenged for so long that he's got this arrogance about him. But it's not an arrogance like, oh, you can't defeat me, I'm underestimating you. He genuinely knows that he's more powerful than you are.
Yeah, it's a very interesting tale, and it definitely holds up as long as you change some of the problematic stuff in it. Next up is Storm King's Thunder. Giants have emerged from their strongholds to threaten civilization as never before. Hill giants are stealing all the grain and livestock they can, while stone giants have been scouring settlements that have been around forever. Fire giants are press-ganging in small folk into the desert, while frost giant longships have been pillaging along the Sword Coast. Even the elusive cloud giants have been witnessed, their wondrous floating cities appearing above Waterdeep and Baldur's Gate, in humans style. You don't get that reference. Where is the storm giant King Hecaton, who is tasked with keeping order among the giants?
Yeah, so I don't have this one yet, but I am going to get it, and I'd love to run it once we've had a few more campaigns in different locations along the Sword Coast. Like right now, we've already been to Baldur's Gate. I think the next campaign we're going to do is either going to be in Waterdeep or it's going to be in the Ten Towns region in Icewind Dale, which is still technically along the Sword Coast. But once we get some more areas of the Sword Coast explored, I definitely want to run Storm King's Thunder because that takes place across the entirety of it. In fact, someone told me on YouTube, or said on YouTube, that in order to play Storm King's Thunder, you almost have to have the Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide.
It'd be helpful.
And I'm a cheapskate, so I'd rather not buy a whole other book. So I'm just using the other campaign settings to do that work for me.
Okay. That might be a good birthday gift for you once that time rolls around. Then,
Maybe.
if it's something you don't want to buy yourself.
I'm going to buy Storm King's Thunder. I just
I mean the Sword Coast Adventurers guide.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's basically just giants gone wild. Fix it. that's the whole thing.
But that's honestly a great plot point. Yeah, it's basically a specific group of people or a specific group of beings who are terrorizing the world, and it's like, this doesn't affect me personally with my backstory or anything, but I don't want hill giants raiding my family's farm.
The main reason I want to play it is to seduce the hill giant queen.
Oh God. Why am I surprised at this?
You shouldn't be.
Oh,
I'm gonna crawl in those folds. I'm gonna get nasty in those sweaty hill giant folds.
No, out. I need bleach.
Audacity is like, please be quiet.
I'm like, please be quiet.
Yeah,
No one should have those kind of thoughts about Chief Guh.
she's great. She's
great, all right.
Like,
just
she's
not terrible, yes, but great.
She's a hill giant, but her challenge rating's only 5 because she's so obese she can't stand.
She literally can't move.
You have her miniature. It was the premium miniature. You mainly bought it because it was so cheap. You mainly bought it as a display piece, but
It's
you
like
have the miniature.
$35 for a premium figure.
Yeah.
I couldn't resist, but it's still gross.
Let's move on to the next one. Out of the Abyss, the Underdark is a subterranean wonderland. I wouldn't call it that, but a vast... Sorry, whenever I start laughing and I'm gunky, I start coughing a bunch. A vast and twisted labyrinth where fear reigns. It is the home of horrific monsters that have never seen the light of day. It is here that the dark elf Gromf, Archmage of Minzo Baranzan, high five me for that one. Yeah. Casts a foul spell meant to ignite a magical energy that suffuses the Underdark and tears open portals to the demonic abyss. Mm-hmm. What steps...
Are you okay?
I'm just gunky. What steps through surprises even him. And from that moment on, the insanity that pervades the Underdark escalates and threatens to shake the Forgotten Realms to its foundations. Stop the madness before it consumes you!
Yeah, I've actually been tempted to get this one, but the one thing that I've had people tell me is that a lot of the story plots, it's very easy to lose interest in some of them, but the thing that bothers me the most is that the races, monsters, and the antagonists in this are so one-dimensional. Specifically the Drow and the Duergar, or Dark Elves and Dark Dwarves for those who haven't played the game, because they're literally... There's nothing to their species. They're just slavers.
I don't know if you've noticed, but pretty much every... I hate to say evil race, because that sounds problematic, but every evil race in D&D is one-dimensional. Like, as one-dimensional as you can get.
I will say that even the devils in Descent into Avernus are less one-dimensional than most other creatures. Because at least the devils, yeah, they're evil, but they don't necessarily want to enslave you personally. They want your soul so that they can turn you into a soldier for their army. But even if you do get turned into a devil by, making a deal with them, you're only bound by what the contract says. So most people, when they become a devil, some of them don't even become soldiers or officers in the army. There are plenty of devils who just do their own thing in Avernus.
Yeah, I feel like our group might have similar opinions about this one that they've had about Descent into Avernus, because they're kind of getting bored of being in Avernus because lots of the roleplay options and stuff are so limited, because everyone down there is like very obviously evil and it's hard to interact with them. And I feel like a campaign that's almost entirely in the Underdark would be very similar.
And that's one thing that a lot of people have said that concerns me about, is that there are very few good drow or dark elves in the Underdark. Most likely, if you ever come across a drow, they're always going to be an enemy and they're going to try and enslave you. Same thing with the Duergar. And honestly, I think the main reason why people are interested in this is because you actually get to fight the Demogorgon in it. I mean, Demogorgon is on the cover of the book.
Yeah, it's on the cover.
The two-headed demon beast of madness.
Two-headed, very kissable boy.
If you say so. From what I just heard you say about Chief Guh, I'm no longer surprised at anything that comes out of your mouth.
Me, Chief Guh, and the Demogorgon in the same room. You better shut that door, boy.
Anyways.
Next up is kind of a collection. Tales of the Yawning Portal. Within this tome are 7 of the most compelling dungeons from the 40-plus year history of Dungeons & Dragons. Some are classics that have hosted an untold number of adventurers, while others are some of the most popular adventures ever printed. Some of them infamous, even. The seeds of these stories now rest in your hands. D&D's most storied dungeons are now part of your modern repertoire of adventures. Enjoy, and remember to keep a few spare character sheets handy.
Especially for the last one.
Yeah. Our group has started this. We played the Sunless Citadel.
Which I thought was a great starting setting for level 1 characters who were new to the game.
I thought it was fun, yeah. And also the... which we actually did a full playthrough of the Sunless Citadel on this podcast. I think it was 3 episodes, maybe?
It was 3, because it took us 3 sessions to get through it.
But a while after we did it, I actually edited together one big episode that was the full story, so you can just listen to that if you want. But, yeah, and then the Tomb of Horrors is also in it, which is very infamous. I destroyed the Tomb of Horrors in high school.
You're one of the few people who do, because there's another YouTuber I was watching, and apparently there's an interview with Gary Gygax, and Gygax created this specific dungeon
to be a jerk.
Well, not just to be a jerk. He kind of did it to be a jerk to other jerks, because one thing that he hated in the first edition was when you get your characters to level 20, the players don't care what the DM says. At level 20, the players can practically challenge the DM on most things because they're just so powerful. So he said, you know what? I hate this. I'm going to make a dungeon that's specifically designed to kill level 20 player characters.
That's kind of no fun, though. Like, there's things in it that don't even have saves, and that's just... They should have saves. Everything should have saves.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just explaining a little bit of the history and reasoning behind why he did this. And, if your players are jerks, I could kind of respect that. But you as the DM, you should never have a DM versus the player's mentality. That is one thing that I've always tried to avoid with our group.
Also, hot take, Gary Gygax was a bad writer. Ooh, got him. Yeah, that's right. Harass me on Twitter about it. I got receipts for this. I could do a full episode on why he's a bad writer.
I've never read any of Gary Gygax's personal work. All the stuff for 5e, I'm sure, is made by other writers in the company.
It's very rambly. Yeah, he didn't technically write anything in 5e because anything he did write has been rewritten. But, yeah, there's lots of several things in there for varying levels. Very fun. Good. We kind of use it for in-between big games.
Yeah, there's a Sunless Citadel. There's one that actually takes place in a dungeon of the Red Wizards of Thay. There's the Tomb of Annihilation, which stars the titular...
The Tomb of what?
Tomb of Horrors, my bad, not Tomb of Annihilation. Although Tomb of Annihilation does have the same big bad guy. A Sararak, who's been like the poster villain for D&D since first edition.
Speaking of, the next book on my list is Tomb of Annihilation. The talk of the streets and taverns has been about the so-called Death Curse, a wasting disease afflicting everyone who's ever been raised from the dead. Victims grow thinner and weaker each day, slowly but steadily sliding towards the death they once denied. When they finally succumb, they can't be raised, and neither can anyone else, regardless of whether they've ever received that miracle in the past. Which is probably for the best, to be honest.
Yeah.
I can't wait till we play this one, because then I'll just be like, yeah, I don't do anything about it.
Yeah,
Temples and scholars of divine magic are at a loss to explain a curse that has affected the entire region and possibly the entire world. Okay, sorry. You go now.
Well, no, and then that D Legend's character is going to have a bad time if we wind up playing this and he's still alive, because he's 2 times overdue now, maybe even 3.
Yep, he'll. We'll probably go into this with new characters. I bet by the time we play this, it'll be new character time, easily. But yeah, Tomb of Annihilation is basically the Tomb of Horrors with story and good.
Yeah, it's without going into spoilers. Sararak is the main bad guy. He's on the cover of the book.
It's in Chult, a.k.a. best place in D&D.
Because of dinosaurs.
Because I love dinosaurs. Sue me. I love dinosaurs.
Now, one thing, I do have this module, but I haven't read it. I've skimmed it just because I was bored one day and I wanted to see what it was about. And it has it's an entire continent or subcontinent.
Yeah.
It literally takes. It has about 100 squares on a grid that consists of the whole map, and it takes you like an entire day to move one square. So you really have to plan out your location and your movement and where you're going and how much time you're going to spend. It's very fun, but very treacherous, especially with the death curse, as you just explained.
Yeah, and in this one, you can like start at level 1 and play it through, but I think there's also rules in it if you want to play at higher level.
There are, and that's what I think is really cool, because like if with our current group, if they defeat Avernus and they still want to play their characters and not retire them, they can totally do that into Descent into Avernus.
You mean into Annihilation?
Yeah, sorry.
Avernus on the mind. We worked on Avernus stuff a bunch today, so.
Yeah. Tomb of Annihilation, I really look forward to that. Plus, there are some reoccurring characters in there that have actually shown up in Descent into Avernus now, actually.
Yeah.
I won't say which ones. There's also, I've heard that there are some reoccurring characters that have shown up in like Storm King's Thunder and Rise of the Dragon Queen that show up in it.
Nice. Our next one is the one that you've wanted to play the most since you started D&D, and we probably should have done it instead of Avernus. Plus, I think this is the one we're going to do next, because we all wanted to do Icewind Dale next, but I think most of us changed our votes, including me, to Waterdeep Dragon Heist, a fantastic treasure trove is yours for the taking. In this adventure for the world's greatest role-playing game.
Are you dying?
I'm dead! Famed explorer Volo...
You have the death curse. You have the death curse.
Needs...
You were resurrected and now you can't function.
I got the giggles for no reason. Complete a simple quest. Thus begins a mad romp through the wards of Waterdeep as you uncover a villainous plot involving some of the city's most influential figures. A grand urban caper awaits you. Pit your skill and bravado against villains the likes of which you've never faced before. And let the dragon hunt begin.
Yeah, Waterdeep Dragon Heist was the first pre-written campaign that I ever bought. It was the first set of miniatures that I ever purchased. Waterdeep Dragon Heist was
You have all the cards for it? You have everything.
Not
everything, but a lot.
Our group with Karen and Kami is what got me interested in Waterdeep Dragon Heist, but...
Those two refused to play.
Well, it's what got me interested in D&D to start with, but the Waterdeep Dragon Heist was what got me interested in the pre-written campaigns. I've been wanting to run it for the longest time, and honestly... The only reason why I didn't put my foot down about playing it to begin with was because, one, I didn't want to be the DM that said, you guys don't get a say, I'm going to choose what we play first. But also because it is such a new player-friendly campaign. Like,
we should have done it first.
The first chapter alone could be its own standalone one-off setting.
Yeah, it's a 1 to 5, which is... Most of these are like 1 to 11, 1 to 13.
Yeah, sessions... There's 5 chapters to the book. The first 3 chapters could literally be done in a single setting, depending on how long you guys like to keep your settings going. And then the last 2 can run between 2 to 3 sessions apiece. And it is so fun. It's an urban setting, so it's in a city, but... While there are challenges that can one-hit kill you if you're stupid, it is very forgiving if you try to play right. Like, you could totally get into trouble with either the city's authorities, the criminal organizations, the different factions in the city, the different officials. But just because you get into trouble, unlike Avernus, doesn't mean it's the end.
Yeah, because right now they're in Avernus, and it's like, you want to kill someone and loot their corpse? More power to you. But in Waterdeep, you do that, you're going to prison.
Even Baldur's Gate is less hospitable than Waterdeep Dragon Heist. Because, someone explained to me, and I mentioned this to you earlier, if you were to compare it to, like, DC cities, Baldur's Gate is very much like Gotham City, where there is a government and there is a law system, but it's very much run by the criminals and the corrupt. And
Swear to me!
Yeah, it's a haven for vigilantes and people who take the law into their own hands. But if that's Gotham City, then Waterdeep Dragon Heist is definitely Metropolis, where it's got its crime, yes, but the people who live there and the authorities who are in charge definitely want the city to thrive. They want the people to be happy, and so they have a very rigid but forgiving legal system that allows people to do what they want within reason. And I love it. Not to mention that by session 2, it gives players a really good spot to set up a headquarters of operations, so that if you are done with the setting, you can still keep those characters, give them a headquarters, and they can move around the rest of the Sword Coast for other pre-written adventures while still having some place to return to.
Nice. Our next one is also out of Waterdeep. It's Waterdeep, Dungeon of the Mad Mage. In the city of Waterdeep rests a tavern called the Yawning Portal, which you can get a giant miniature of for $300. That's for gameplay, and I can tell you're having the... you had to smash your phone so you wouldn't buy it. Named after the gaping pit in its common room. At the bottom of this crumbling shaft is a labyrinthine dungeon shunned by all but the most daring adventurers. Known as Undermountain, the dungeon is the domain of the mad wizard Hallister Blackcloak. That was a normal name, Hallister, and I still messed it up. Long has the Mad Mage dwelt in these forlorn depths, seeding his lair with monsters, traps, and mysteries. To what end is a constant source of speculation and concern. This one's a dungeon crawl.
Yeah, it is. It is a sequel to Waterdeep Dragon Heist, and basically, if your characters played Waterdeep Dragon Heist and you want more of Waterdeep, this is for you.
It looks pretty rad. It's got a Mind Flayer and a Death Tyrant on the cover.
Not to mention...
don't talk away from the mic,
sorry.
Yeah, stick around. Hang out for a while.
No, I'm wanting to show something off. When I first got this setting for Christmas 2 years ago, my folks got me a map pack of all the different dungeons.
Oh wow, the audience can't see that, but that's still pretty cool.
Yeah,
that's going to be really helpful.
Yeah,
actually.
So that's the thing. Undermountain is literally just 15 different dungeon maps.
It's a 5 to 20.
6 to 20.
6 to 20. It says 5 to 20 on this.
Oh, does it?
Yep. Because you go 1 to 5 in Dragon Heist, and then it's 5 to 20 in Mad Mage.
But yeah, it says, this map pack says 23 maps of Undermountain, each one representing a different level of the dungeon, 3 maps of subterranean towns, 18 perforated secret cards, and 9 perforated Elder Rune cards. So this is a must-have if you run the Waterdeep Dragon Heist Dungeon of the Mad Mage setting, and it's crazy.
Yeah, if you're going to run this for your players, we have our players vote on the next thing, but if you're going to run this for your players... disclose the length of this thing. 5 to 20 is long, right?
Yes.
Especially if you're taking 1 to 5 characters that they're already invested in.
I can tell you right now that judging from the size of some of these dungeons, there's no way that you can fit a single session into each level. You will probably be spending 2 to 3 sessions per level, and then there's 15 dungeon areas. So 15 times 3, you're looking at 45 sessions minimum.
Yeah, what our group's going to do is we're going to play Dragon Heist first, and then we're just going to wait till we want to play this. Maybe we shouldn't play this until our group's more experienced. Because
definitely, from what we've experienced with the Dungeon of the Dead 3 and some of the other dungeons like in the Sunless Citadel, I'm not 100% a master at running dungeon crawls, and I know that our players can get kind of bored if...
You're much better with cities.
Yeah.
You're good with cities, but I'm not good at writing dungeons either. Well, you didn't write those, but yeah, you know what I mean.
Yeah, I have to get a little bit more experience with doing dungeons as a DM, and I definitely want our players to be more familiar with combat and roleplay before we start doing a campaign that is nothing but dungeons.
Yeah, my GMing is best done like in the wilderness. Yours is best done in cities. Maybe we need someone who's best in dungeons. Then we'll be rounded out. But yeah, we'll probably wait till our group is relatively experienced and then run this, because it's quite a commitment. I think Connor will actually really like this one, because I think he wants all his characters to make it to 20. I kind of get bored with him after 15, to be honest. Probably a little sooner than that, but...
I'm happy to do whatever you guys want to do. My job is just to make sure that we all have a good time.
Yeah, I definitely do want to play it, though. I want to play all these just so I can say I did it.
I do, too. I just want to be prepped for it ahead of time.
The next one is another kind of anthology compilation, levels 1 to 12. Ghosts of Saltmarsh, which brings classic D&D adventures into 5th edition. This adventure book combines some of the most popular classic adventures from the first edition of Dungeons & Dragons, including the classic U series. plus some of the best nautical adventures from the history of Dungeon Magazine, Sinister, Secret of Saltmarsh, Danger at Dunwater, Salvage Operation, Isle of the Abbey, The Final Enemy, and Tamarat's Fate, as well as The Styles.
I've heard some good things and some hard criticisms about this one. I do own it, and it can be run in two different ways. Like Tales from the Yawning Portal, you can pick apart the individual encounters and run them as either one-offs or separate sets, or you can run everything back-to-back and it can function as a fully fleshed-out campaign setting. It's a little weird, though. Despite being called Ghosts of Saltmarsh, there's not any actual ghosts in it.
Yeah, I think there's maybe like one ghost in an underwater part, but here's how I explained it. This is almost certainly not what they meant, but here's how I explained it to myself. These stories are ghosts of previous sessions.
They are.
That's how I'm explaining it to myself.
Much like Tales from the Yawning Portal, they are from older D&D sessions and stories. They've just been rewritten so that they can be run back-to-back in a continual or a coherent setting. And one other thing that I've actually read and I'm not a big fan of, their ship controls and mechanics.
Yeah, I hear the main reason to get this is actually for the ship mechanics.
Descent into Avernus, in my personal experience, actually does a better job of explaining multi-crewed vehicle mechanics.
Oh, yeah, because our group has an Infernal War Machine. We actually have two, because I'm on a motorcycle one and the rest of them are in a big one.
Infernal War Machines are basically just battleships on land.
They're Mad Max cars.
Yeah, but some of them are as big as battleships. And
giant claw flashbacks!
One person on YouTube that I remember reading said that what they did is they took the ship positions and layout from Ghosts of Saltmarsh and then combined them with the mechanics for running war machines in Descent into Avernus. And it works so much better than the way Ghosts of Saltmarsh has it laid out.
Yeah, I hear in Ghosts of Saltmarsh, like, if you're the ship cook, you don't really get to participate in combat.
No, there's only like 2 ship's positions that actually get to do anything.
That being said, I want to be the cook because I have a great idea for a cook character, and also, I don't really care about combat that much.
Well, now in Tasha's Cauldron and everything, they have a chef's feat that you can take.
Oh, really? Dope.
Yeah.
I'll do that. I have okay, this won't surprise you, but the chef is a lizard folk. And he's the most, desired chef for a ship.
He's the gourmet!
No. He's the most desired chef for a ship, but all his food sucks. Because he's a lizard folk, so he doesn't season it or anything, right? But it's the most efficient cooking in the world, because it's completely balanced for health. Because lizard folk are all survival and practical and stuff, so it's completely balanced for health. It's rationed perfectly. It's also very low cost, so every ship wants him, despite his food sucking, because he can save them thousands and thousands of gold and keep them the healthiest.
Yeah, for the least amount of gold, he'll keep you alive the longest in terms of hunger.
Would you let me play that?
Totally.
I think it's a good idea.
That's fun as all get out.
I think it's a good idea.
Plus, I've seen other people play in D&D streams where they actually have a character who is a cook, and it works really cool.
Yeah, it's one of the...
Or it works really well.
It's one of the main ship characters you're supposed to have, I think.
One thing that's really funny with the cook background is that you actually you get proficiency with simple weapons that are cooking utensils. So like rolling pins and frying pans you can use in combat.
I doubt anyone else would want to be the cook in our group also. Except maybe Keocat. Keocat would probably love to be the cook. But I got dibs.
I don't know, because Keocat likes animals too much, and she'd be required to cook them.
She loves cooking in real life.
Where's Slobber Chops?
Oh, no. Slamber Champs! He's gone!
Slobber Chops is now my Slobber Chops.
Slobbering on those chops. Oh, no. We're dead. Okay, we're going to go ahead and move into the next one, which is the one we're currently playing, Baldur's Gate, Descent into Avernus. Welcome to Baldur's Gate, a city of ambition and corruption. You've just started your adventuring career, but already find yourself embroiled in a plot that sprawls from the shadows of Baldur's Gate to the front lines of the plains-spanning blood war that your party will refuse to look at.
I made them look at it one time.
And then they were like, and then And then last session they were like, we've never seen the Blood War. And
Yes, you have.
You almost threw something, I swear. But do you have what
I did almost throw something.
Do you have what it takes to turn infernal war machines and nefarious contracts against the archdevil Zariel and her diabolical hordes? And can you even hope to find your way home safely when pitted against the infinite evils of the Nine Hells? This is what we're playing right now. It's a 1-13.
One thing that I think is really cool about Baldur's Gate is that it's 2/3 of it are a campaign setting, but then the last third of the book is almost a encounter / world building. Like, there is a whole section about how to build a character who is originally from Baldur's Gate. There's a ton of new additions to backgrounds and class features. And there's even some racial stuff, like with changelings and other stuff that you can apply as well. It's very fascinating, very cool, and it, like just like in Waterdeep, it gives you the full fleshed out map of how to use Baldur's Gate in a campaign setting. So even if you're not running the Descent into Avernus section of this campaign in Hell, you can still run a full campaign in the city of Baldur's Gate that you've cooked up yourself. I love it.
Yeah, this one's definitely for seasoned players, though. We should not have played this as soon as we did, especially since half the group was introduced in this as their first adventure.
And I'm not tooting my own horn or anything, but I when I put this on the table, I did it so out of a courtesy to say, okay, here's what all I got.
There was also the most recent one at the time.
Yeah, this is what I've got. What are you guys interested in? And my personal preference was Waterdeep Dragon Heist, not just because I've been waiting forever to run it, but also because it's very forgiving to new players and it's a good starting campaign. But then everyone's like, ooh, I want to do the one where we all go to hell and fight devils, and I'm going to be the ultimate supreme good guy.
Yeah,
Not.
Too many long rests, that's not going to happen.
No.
Your alignment can shift on long rests.
No, I was a little bit... I mean, I also didn't know as much about the campaign as I do now because I was a more or less experienced DM. But looking back at it now, and of course hindsight's 2020, but it was I would have put my foot down. I'm like, no, we either need to run Waterdeep Dragon Heist, Curse of Strahd, or one of the other Tales from the Yawning Portal settings.
Yeah, I think we either should have done more Yawning Portal or Waterdeep. Waterdeep would have been the best choice, though. Dragon Heist.
So I don't regret the decision, but
I mean, it's a cool adventure.
It is. But if I had the foresight to do it again, I would probably recommend and enforce something a little bit simpler.
Once we're done with it, we're going to do a big in-depth review. But until then, I want to say it's got Baldur's Gate like at the beginning, which means they're probably going to have more Baldur's Gate centered adventures if they felt the need to put it at the right at the beginning, like they did with Waterdeep.
Well, not to mention they're also releasing Baldur's Gate 3, the video game.
Oh yeah, that's fair too. But like Baldur's Gate is the least relevant location in the entire thing.
Sort of. It's definitely one of the oldest settings. Like, I remember, like, Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, the video game, came out back in, like, the late 80s, early 90s. Well, no. Like, early 90s, I think, is when it first came out. So, it's been around since at least 3rd edition. It's more relevant if you're doing homebrew set in the Faerun world. But as far as story elements go, yeah, there's literally only one or two other campaigns that even mention Baldur's Gate. And it doesn't even take place in Baldur's Gate. It just has people that are from the city.
My problem with the Baldur's Gate part of this campaign is most of your time in Baldur's Gate is kind of not doing relevant stuff to the Avernus quest. Like, it doesn't really become relevant until you're about to take down the Vanthapor family. And before that, there's a whole Dungeon of the Dead 3, which has minor things to do with going to Avernus, but very minor things that could have been introduced a much quicker and more efficient way.
We also didn't have a proper session 0, so when everyone made their characters, no one knew anything about Baldur's Gate. I did not go through and give the general layout of the city, some of its basic history, and other stuff. So we almost went into it blind.
I've never had a session 0 in 12 years of playing, and we need to do them from now on.
And I think that worked with you guys because a lot of your 4th edition settings, and correct me if I'm wrong, were those homebrewed or were those pre-written?
Both. It was a mix of both.
Okay.
But it was the same characters and it was all in the same world. It was in the...
And another issue that I have with what we're doing right now, Baldur's Gate, they give you so much information about the city in the module.
And then you leave it for most of it.
Then you leave it, and even when you're in Baldur's Gate, it's a very linear path for the story. You don't... I mean, you can, of course, I encourage you to explore, and you have the option to explore, but if you don't know what's around in Baldur's Gate, and you're not comfortable with just asking questions like some of our players are, it's very railroady.
And the longer you stay in Baldur's Gate, you're just wasting time by just staying in Baldur's Gate and running around.
Yeah.
Because you take down the Vampire family, and that's how you find out that Baldur's Gate is about to get dragged to hell. And so you go to Candlekeep, and you're there for like 5 minutes, and you get sent to hell, and then you spend most of the game in hell. But it's like, okay, so the whole Dungeon Undead 3 thing is basically a tutorial, but this is for seasoned players, but it has a tutorial dungeon.
Yeah.
It's very weird. I know we're talking a little more about this one specifically than others, but that's because this is the one we've played the most.
But without going into too much more of a detail, we'll save that stuff for the in-depth review.
After we complete the campaign, we're going to wait a little while, collect our thoughts, and then we're going to do an in-depth review of Descend into Avernus. Mm-hmm. That'll probably be a long episode. Might be a two-parter. But the next one, actually, on the list is Icewind Dale, Rime of the Frost Maiden. I'm not going to do the read-up for this one because we're already at an hour and a half.
And basically, I just say this. If this is what we still wanted to play for our next campaign, I would still be very much excited for it. But this is basically just Avernus that is very, very cold.
Yeah, one reason, because I wanted to play this at first next because I love frozen settings, and it's very wilderness heavy. And it's also horror. It's a horror game.
Horror and suspense.
But then I was like, Ascend into Avernus is pretty dark. And Icewind Dale's even darker. Maybe a breather would be nice.
Something with actual friendly NPCs. And there are friendly NPCs in Icewind Dale. But the problem with Icewind Dale is that it is very rugged. And the area itself is normally very hostile. But it's even more hostile since it's come under this magical winter that doesn't seem to let up. And even the friendly NPCs that are in town, they're more like begrudgingly gruff, helpful, not, hi, how can we help you, friendly, like they would be in Waterdeep.
Yeah, so I think it's best to wait on that one. Also, it's like the newest one, so it's going to have the least spoilers floating around, so we can afford to wait on it longer. Whereas Waterdeep spoilers are almost
everywhere.
Like, yeah, they're impossible to avoid, you know? They're impossible to avoid. But it does look very, very cool. And
I'm definitely still excited to run it. I would just recommend that we play some of the older things we already have than jumping right into the newest book.
Yeah, next up, we're going to get into campaign settings, which are basically books that are like, this is the world. Here's how to write your own adventure in the world. The first up is the Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide, which is pretty much everything you need for writing a campaign that takes place along the Sword Coast.
Waterdeep, Baldur's Gate, Icewind Dale, etc., etc.
You've actually already talked a lot about this one throughout this podcast, so I feel like we don't need to say that much. But you might want it if you're playing Storm King's Thunder, and if you just like the places you visit in Storm King's Thunder and want to go there again, this might be something you want to pick up. Mm-hmm. But it's not something you are specifically interested in.
I've got so much other stuff that talks about the Sword Coast in detail, I feel like I just don't need it that much.
The next one isn't a D&D world at all. Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica, which is Magic the Gathering, actually. And it's a setting book for like Ravnica, which is this huge city full of all these different factions.
That was a bit of a bombshell when I first saw this, because when I first... this was actually before we fully got whole hog into D&D. We went to a comic shop in Athens, and I saw the miniatures boxes, the individual ones they had, and I saw, and this was back when I was whole hog into Magic the Gathering.
You hadn't even... I think you'd barely played D&D if you'd even started yet.
I played Magic the Gathering for a lot longer and with more vigor than I did D&D before we started getting into it. And the only reason I bought those 2 boxes of Magic, the Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica boxes was because, 1, they were Magic related, and 2, you were getting a box of miniatures and I wanted to do a video with you. But when I heard that, they did a Magic the Gathering one, and the guy at the front shelf was like, no, Ravnica is a world that exists in the Dungeons & Dragons multiverse. They just made it into a card game. And I'm like, are you serious?
Yeah, they just shoved Ravnica in there. They were like, cool, we own both these, so we can do that.
And I'm like, Tell me more.
Makes Loxodons playable, I think, right?
Loxodons.
If we win and if and when we do Ravnica, I'm a Loxodon, 100%.
I'll allow pretty much any race in the Forgotten Realms. If you're like a Loxodon or something like that, you're going to be really, really rare.
I just want to be a Loxodon in Ravnica. I think does it have centaurs or something? Or centaurs?
Centaurs and Minotaurs.
Minotaurs are cool. But yeah, that's basically it for that one. It's just in Ravnica from Magic the Gathering and everything you need for a Magic the Gathering game, specifically a Ravnica one.
Mm-hmm.
The next one is Acquisitions Incorporated.
You know more about this one than I do.
Yeah, I haven't listened to the show, but apparently there is a show based on the podcast and web series Acquisitions Incorporated. And Acquisitions Incorporated is like a D&D web series. And I think it's comedy based. And it's like basically a company for adventuring, which makes sense.
It's an adventurers guild.
I've actually played lots of the Acquisitions Incorporated stuff on the Neverwinter video game, the MMORPG. And it was fun. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was funny. The cover is very cartoony. And I actually thought this was an adventure at first, but then in doing research for this episode, I was like, oh, it's a source book. I think it has some encounters and stuff in it, in case your DM isn't funny.
I do know, the one thing that I do know about is that there is a completely different sub-race of goblin that you can play as in that one. They're very niche, but they do exist in Faerun, and they are, you can actually build your character as that race using that book.
That's pretty cool. But yeah, that one's mostly, if you like the show, put it in your game. And then we got the one that everybody always talks about. No one shuts up about.
Is this Wildmount?
No. I never hear anyone talk about Wildmount.
Really, because that's the world that Critical Role takes place in.
I've never seen an episode, and I'm never going to watch one, because I don't like live play. Eberron, Rising from the Last War.
I do have that one, and I'm excited to write a story campaign around it.
Yeah. So the book provides everything that you need to write a campaign that takes place in Eberron, which is like this war-torn place with technology that's fueled by like magic instead of electricity. It's airships, lightning trains, very steampunky, but with way more magic.
It's magic, steampunk meets noir.
Yeah, with lots of swashbuckling and stuff. It's pretty cool.
One thing that I wanted to get when I got Eberron, the two things I wanted most was one, it gives you the race, the Warmind, which is a humanoid construct character that you can play as, that has a whole new set of mechanics that come with it. Kind of like basically if you want to play a sentient Terminator. And then you also have the Artificer class. It was the first book to come out that featured the Unearthed Arcana made standard Artificer class with all the subclasses before Tasha's came out.
Gotta love it. I hear people talk about Artificer and Warforged a lot. But the next one is the one you just mentioned, Explorer's Guide to Wildmount. A war brews on the continent that has withstood more than its fair share of conflict. The Dwedalian Empire and the Kern Dynasty are carving up the lands around them, and only the greatest heroes would dare stand between them. Somewhere in the far corners of this war-torn landscape are secrets that could end this conflict and usher in a new age of peace, or burn the world to a cinder. I know nothing about this. Please tell me about it.
Actually, the only reason why I know anything about this is because I've watched some YouTubers review it a little bit. I personally, I love the concept of Critical Role, but I have no interest in the story.
It's catching up on Critical Role is like catching up on The Simpsons or One Piece at this point.
There is one thing that I do like about it. I actually stumbled across a recommended video on my YouTube account, and they actually have an animated series now where they are breaking down 8 episodes at a time and condensing it down to a little 3-minute animated short.
Oh, of Critical Role?
Yeah, and it's made by Critical Role. Like, apparently one of the female players is an animator and a voice actress, and she is literally just narrating and boiling down the key points that happen in like 8 to 10 episodes at a time. So if you're like super behind on Critical Role and you don't have the time to sit down and watch the 2-hour-long episodes, just watch this 3-minute long video, 4-minute long video, and you can pretty much be caught up by the time they get ahead.
That actually sounds like something I'd love to watch, because you know me, I really like listening to like recap stories, which is how we do it on this podcast. Because I hate live play. It takes way too long. There's a lot of dead space.
Well, too bad, because they've only come out with 2 episodes, the first one introducing the cast, and the second one talking about the first 8 episodes, and they're like 213 episodes in.
Eee! Whatever. The next one is another Magic the Gathering one. Mythic Odysseys of Theros, which is basically Magic the Gathering's Greek setting.
I honestly have no desire to run that one. If the group wants to play it, I will buy it and I will run it. But I have no desire to run a Greek mythologies themed D&D setting.
I would want to do one in this if we also had the Grey Merchant of Asphodel.
Yes, or Asphodel.
Asphodel, the Grey Merchant of Asphodel that Grady from Gallant Goblin wrote. I'd only want to run it if we had that. Support the Gallant Goblin, a.k.a. best YouTube channel. Other than mine. I really love them. They're good. They do lots of good miniature stuff. But yeah, that's basically just more Magic the Gathering, but Greek. It's instead of Coruscant, you're in Greece.
They add more options for the Centaur and Minotaur races, and then they add a bunch of Greek-inspired mechanics. So, I could take it or leave it.
Yeah, and we usually record these episodes like a month in advance, so I'm not sure if it's out yet. The next thing coming out should be the Candlekeep Mysteries book?
Yes, The Mysteries of Candlekeep, which I thought was actually really funny because when the characters in Descendant to Avernus went to Candlekeep, they wanted to spend a bunch of time exploring it. And it's literally a fortress created by wizards, so that is a campaign setting in itself.
Yeah, it's... But they were there for like no time at all. They talk to the troll. They go straight to the tiefling. She puts them on griffins and sends them on their way.
But when I saw this, I'm like, hey, the players really enjoyed this place, and now they've got a module that is nothing but stories from Candlekeep. And I think
it's another anthology one, I think.
Yeah, it's another anthology one, and basically, I think when I read the description, it is 23 to 24 mystery settings, where it's not a big swashbuckling dungeon run, a big expansive campaign. It is mysteries that you can insert into various parts of your own stories.
Well, all of Candlekeep is basically just a big scholarly place, so mysteries make the most sense, but also I love mystery stories and playing them, and that's why I'm super excited about this one. I love mysteries.
Connor was especially excited when he saw this because when I showed him some of the artwork for what Candlekeep looks like, and he says, that looks like someplace you'd see in Dark Souls. I love Dark Souls, therefore I love this place.
God, none of you shut up about Dark Souls. Oh, that reminds me of when Zariel's fortress flew overhead when they were descending the chains of Eltuel.
Yeah.
And he was like, that place looks cool. I hope we can go there someday.
No, you don't.
And we were like, oh, you're going there.
You're going whether you like it or not.
You are going to die there.
You apply this as if you have some kind of say-so. Spoiler alert, you don't.
But yeah, basically that's all the big official published stuff right now. When anything new comes out, we'll talk about it. This one actually went a little longer than I expected it to, but I think it's a pretty good episode.
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually getting a little hungry. But I think that's it for today. Thank you all very much for your support. Remember to rate, comment, subscribe. Check out all the cool links in the description below. Remember, I'm going to be throwing my Call of Cthulhu bestiary up on Patreon, so definitely check that out. Link down there. If you want to see a lot of unboxing, gaming stuff, check out the YouTube. And if you're listening to this on YouTube, I highly recommend that you listen to it someplace like Spotify, Apple Music, Google Podcasts, etc., because they come out much earlier, often a week or so earlier. There, the putting them on YouTube is basically just to catch more viewers and also kind of a library of them in case I lose them on the audio format somehow. But that's it. Thank you all once again for your support, and we'll see you all next time.
Bye.